Hello, my name is Bright Etanam Sunu. I am a mobile engineer and also a GDE for Flutter and that. I'm actually supposed to be in Nigeria for the physical event, but um, over the weekend I had an issue with my flight, which we had to cancel it. Therefore, I had to take the session online. I'm sorry about that, and I hope next time I'll have the opportunity to actually visit Nigeria for my talk. Now, today we'll be looking at networking and API integration for Flutter developers. So my talk is more beginner friendly. So basically, anyone starting in Flutter and you've started making network calls or you want to know how to make network calls, this talk is for you. Now let us look at what we'll be covering today. So we will be looking at understanding networking and APIs. We will also be looking at making HTTP requests and passing JSON data. We'll also look at working with common APIs. So we'll look at integrating the OpenWeather API or Google Maps API. Then we have our Q&A, so questions and answers. So now let us dive right in. Now, understanding networking and APIs. So what is networking in Flutter? Networking in Flutter refers to the process of exchanging data between Flutter application and a remote server. So this basically means is you uploading a picture from your Flutter application to, let's say, in Firebase or a remote server somewhere, or making a call with your Flutter application with Agora server somewhere, right? So anything that involves exchange of data between your Flutter application and a remote server is basically networking. Now, what is an API in Flutter? Now, API or Application Programming Interface in Flutter is a set of rules and specifications that define how applications can interact with each other. Now, APIs in Flutter doesn't only means HTTP APIs, right? So we have different form of APIs in Flutter. When you make use of the foundation API, so when you are trying to find out if the platform the app is running on is Android, iOS, Windows, or web, you make use of a certain API called the foundation API. That's what you import. So that is what we call an API because it helps you interact with services somewhere, also services on the physical device that lets you know whether the device is an Android device or a Windows or an iOS device. Now, what is the importance of networking and APIs? So, importance is they enable you to enable real-time data exchange. So, for example, when you create a chat application in Flutter, right, you're able to chat with your friends, groups, or whoever in real time. So using something like Firebase now. Firebase uses a form of network or a form of HTTP request underneath the whole package, which helps you get that real-time effect, right? And also, it allows you to integrate third-party services. So, for instance, if you want to make use of an SMS package, so you decide to integrate a third-party SMS service in your app so that you can send OTPs from your app, right? That is basically the help of networking and APIs. It enhances user experience with live data and interactive features. So again, using like the call feature of your app or even the maps feature. If your app has a geolocation, you can easily get a live location of the person. You can draw route and get a whole lot of information from that. And all that is basically making use of APIs and networking. So now let us look at how to make HTTP request and pass JSON data. Now, what is HTTP? HTTP, meaning Hypertext Transfer Protocol, requests are used to fetch or send data from and to a server. So this basically means that using HTTP protocol, the HTTP protocol, you can send data from your device to a server somewhere or get data from a server somewhere to your device, right? Now in Flutter, there's a package called HTTP, which is officially supported by the Flutter team, that you can easily use to make this request. There are other third-party packages out there like Dio, Retrofit, and Chopper. The other ones that I don't know of, but I know there are quite a lot. You can make use of all these packages to make HTTP requests to and from a server. Now, these are 6 popular API architecture styles that are heavily used nowadays. Now, we have the gRPC, the SOAP, GraphQL, Webhook, REST, and WebSocket. I'm going to quickly explain all this and then we move on. Now, gRPC is basically used if you need a very fast communication or a fast response time. So for gRPC, you basically write functions or procedures on a server, and you then invoke them from your device, right? And yeah, so most libraries or most packages that are created with this are basically very fast. Example is like the Firebase packages, or let me say the Google packages, because they use this a lot in creating their packages. Then we have SOAP. So SOAP doesn't use JSON data type, it uses XML. Now this structure is like a little straight, so the standard is straight, which means that you can't change, let me call it the schema, the XML schema, once like it's been declared, right? So it's like there's a straight format that you have to go with. And I mean, this system is still being used now. Some banks still use this system, so a lot of legacy systems are still built on this. Now we have GraphQL, but before I come to GraphQL, let me explain Webhook and REST. Then I can use that to explain GraphQL. Now, Webhook is basically machine-to-machine communication, right? So, let's say you have a payment system somewhere. So, for example, we have Paystack. Now, you want to send a receipt to the user after payment is done, right? You can basically use Webhook. So Webhook is you create an API somewhere and you add it to Paystack that dashboard, and then I mean all that will happen is every time a successful transaction or anytime a transaction occurs, right, Paystack will call this API that you've added to their dashboard. So that is called the webhook. So anytime they call the webhook will perform whatever function you created it to perform. Now that's how it works. Now we have REST API. So REST API is just the most common type of APIs available, right? You will make a request to a server and you wait for a response. That is it. Very simple, right? Now let me go back to GraphQL. So GraphQL is trying to solve the issue of REST API overfetching and underfetching. What does this two thing means? Let's say you have your app, and in your app you have a profile section, and this profile section you want to display only 5 items. So the profile picture, the first name, the last name, the username, and probably the email, right? But the API that the backend developer has created for you is serving you with the user's location, their phone number, their bio, their video, like a whole lot of information that you don't need, right? That is basically overfetching, because you don't need those, you only need 5 fields, and they are basically giving you everything. So what GraphQL does is you create a schema, and inside that schema, you declare that, okay, you want only these five fields. And when you make your request, right, the backend will return you, or the server will return you only these 5 fields. It won't return you the location and the phone number, because you didn't request for it. It only return you the particular fields that you request for. That is GraphQL. Now, let's look at WebSocket. So WebSocket is more like REST API, but this time for real-time communication. So what WebSocket does is it's more like a pipe connected to between your device and a server. So in that case, you can easily send information to and fro, like in near real time or in real time. So usually chat applications make use of this. Location-based applications like sharing your location with a loved one, and you want them to get the updated location or updated coordinates, you can basically make use of WebSocket. Now let us move on. So now let us look at how to make an HTTP. So an example of making an HTTP request in Flutter. Now the first thing you have to do is you need to add the HTTP library or the HTTP package to your YAML file. So after adding it, you go to your service or your repository, and then you basically import the package. So you import the HTTP package, and then in this example, in the main function, the first line, we are basically creating our link, so our URL, and now we are making requests to the Flutter website. Now in the next line, we are now waiting for a response, right? So if you look at the right hand side, after the await, we are getting. So in HTTP, there are different methods that you can use. We have get, post, patch, put, delete, options, head, and some other ones, right? So all these have different meanings. You can read on them later on. Now in this case, we are using the get, which means that we are getting an information from the server to our application. And in the last 2 lines, we are printing the response. So we are saying that response.status code. So the status code basically is a unique code that the server will return to us, which have meaning. So if you see a code like 200, it means that it was successful. If you see something like 500, it means that there was a server error. If you get something like 400, it means there was an authentication error, right? So that's how these things work. Now let us look at parsing JSON data. Now what is JSON? So JSON is a lightweight data exchange format. It is widely used in data storage and exchange on the web and mobile applications. Data is structured in a key value pair, so which means that JSON data basically looks like a map data type in that or in Flutter. Now let us look at an example. So in order for you to parse a JSON data, right? First of all, you need to import the convert API. So this particular API or package or library helps you to convert one format to another. So if the data that is coming from the server is coming as a string, it will usually come as a string, right? Then you basically use this package to convert it into a JSON format. So if you look at inside our main function, the JSON, the value assigned is a string. So in the next line, we are using the JSON.decode to basically convert it into a map. And then in the last line, we are printing out the name field inside this map. Now, the next example, we want to convert this JSON data that we are getting into an object to help us work with it easier, right? Because in the first example, you can easily make a mistake in the name, right? In the name field. Once you omit a letter, you won't get any data, right? You get a null data and you'll be pulling your hair trying to find out what you did wrong. So in order for us to prevent all this, we can easily convert our JSON data to an object, so a class, a model, and then we can use that class or model in our code easily. Now, for you to do that, you first need to import the JSON serializable package. It's on pub.dev. And after you do that, you go to your model or your class. So over here, we have a model called person. So a class called person. Now, you first need to add the annotation JSON serializable to indicate that this will be using the serializable methods. Now, inside this class, we have the from JSON and to JSON. So the from JSON basically helps you convert JSON to an object or a class or the class person. And the to JSON means that you are trying to convert the class now back to a JSON. Sorry. Now going back, in the main function, in the first line, again, we have our JSON data, which is a string. Now, in the next line, we now have person equal to person.fromJSON. And if you look at this bracket, we are calling the JSON decode over here. So we are basically converting the string to a map, and then we are feeding the map into the from JSON to convert it into a class. And in the last line, we can easily call person.name, right, which will give us the same result, which is John Doe. Now, what are some best practices when you are passing data? One is you have to make sure you handle malformed JSON. So there are some times that the data coming isn't structured well. So the JSON data coming isn't structured well, right? You need to be very careful of this. Otherwise, you keep getting an error and you may not know where that error is coming from. So you need to either use a try catch to handle that error, or you need to find a way to basically make sure that you're getting the right data. And even if the data coming has an issue, you're able to gracefully handle it. It doesn't crash your app. The second one is you need to understand the structure of the JSON data you're working with. You can easily use online websites like JSON Online Inspector, I think. Yeah, you can use that. So you can just paste the JSON data in there and it will show you the structure of the JSON data. So having this structure in mind can help you easily work with it. Now the third one is you need to pass the data in an isolate. Now the third one is a little tricky, so I'll add an example to it to explain the concept. Now this is a lot of code, but I'll try and explain it. Now, so I think we already conversed with the first part, which is having our class called person, which is a JSON serializable. Now, the next set of code is what I will explain, which is this. Now, in the next set of code, what we are doing is we are first converting our response, which is a string. So if you look at the parameter here, it is a string, so string response body. So, and over here we are converting the string to a JSON, right? And we are casting it. So over here, this dot casting, that we are forcing it to be of the type map, which means that if this data coming is of a different type, there's a high chance that we may get an error. So this is more or less like a very dangerous code that we are writing. Right. Now in the last line, which is the return function, over here we are basically mapping the data we are getting. So the parse data, this data, we are basically mapping it to our class over here, right? That is all we are doing. I think this is something that we are already conversant with, right? But now in our main function, this is what we do differently. So we've introduced a new method called compute. So compute basically takes first of all the way we are converting the data, and the second is the data that we are actually converting. Now what this means is this compute will basically spawn a new isolate. So isolate basically in Flutter is threads. So that is a single threaded language, which means that there's only one thread, which is the main thread. Your UI is running on the main thread. Every computation you are performing is happening on the main thread. So that's why in most cases, if you are performing very long, heavy tasks on the main thread, your app has that lagging issue, right? And for you to fix that, you need to use isolate. So isolate is basically a new thread. So what happens is your Flutter app will basically create a new thread and will run that function on that thread. So that function will not be run on the main thread, it will run on another thread, and after it is done, you can easily pass the result or the message back to the main thread. So in the main function, that is what we are doing. So we are using the compute function of the compute method to basically make sure that we are passing the data not on the main thread but on a different thread. Therefore, if the data we are passing is huge, so let's say if we have 500 persons, right? So the JSON data coming is for 500 people. Instead of us performing all this thing on the main thread, which is a heavy task, we can have a new thread and then perform it there and easily pass the results back to the main thread. I will add resources to this so you can read on isolate later. Now let us look at the next thing, working with common APIs. So in this section, I'm going to demo how to fetch data from an API and how to pass the response of that data to our an object and then display that result in our UI. Alright, so in this section, I'm going to basically create a new Flutter application, and then we look at how to integrate the API. So so I'm going to create a new Flutter app, and I'm going to just call this app. So first I need to select where to store this. I'm going to select this and just call it Then I'm just going to create a new file and call it home.stat. So again, I can import material and then create, for now, a stateless widget. Let's call it home. So in my main, I'm just going to replace all this with home. Alright, so now we have this ready. So the next thing we have to do is get our API. So I'm going to use the OpenWeatherMap. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to open this, and you have to basically log in. I hope I remember my login. Okay. Alright, so if you don't have an account, you can create a new account. If you already have an account, you can just log in. So now the next step is basically getting our API. Then we'll go back and get our API key. So we can look at the documentation. So click on API. Then you can look at the API that we want. So we only want the current weather in a location, right? So we open the API docs, and yeah. So as you can see, there are two formats of, actually there are three formats of response. You can choose to get your response in a JSON format, XML, or HTML. We will focus on JSON, and this is the API. So this is the API that we will be calling, right? So I'm going to just copy this and go back to our code. So inside our home, first of all, I'm going to convert this stateless widget to a stateful widget. And for you to do that, you just need to click on the class, the home class, and then you click on the bulb icon here and look at the more option, convert to stateful widget. You click on it, and now we have a stateful widget. So inside this widget, I'm going to first create a variable, call it API, which is a string, and it's this, the thing that I copied. Now we need our latitude and longitude. I'm not going to integrate a location picker in this because there's not so much time. So I'm just going to pick a location of the internet, and we can do that. All right, so let me see. Let me go to maps. Okay. All right, so I am in Ghana, so I'm just going to pick any location that I get in Ghana. Okay. So when you click on it, you should see the latitude and longitude. I'm just going to copy this and head back to my code. So I'm going to create a new variable, call it latitude. Let me clear this away, paste it. Another one is longitude. Now in this, we're going to make use of string interpolation, right? Or string replacement. So latitude is equal to $latitude, and longitude is again equal to $. We have an error here, but we'll fix it later on. It's because we have these two guys over here. So yeah, I mean, you can easily fix it by moving them out. So you can move them out of the class for now and replace the final with const. Now we need to add the last thing that we need, which is our API key. So you go back to the website and you go to, I think you go to your profile, then you go to my keys, and then you can basically see all your keys. I mean, you can also create like a new key. So let me just create a new key. What is it? Yeah, okay. So this is my new key. I'm going back to the code, and again I'm going to add the key over here. We'll be doing some refactoring later on because we need to secure this key, right? So I'm going to paste the key over here. So now in the code, in the API, again I'll replace it with API key. So now we have our link ready. So the next thing we have to do is make our API request. So I'll make this request inside the init state. So when the app runs for the first time, right? I'm going to create a function called fetchWeather, and this function is going to be void of type void called fetchWeather. Sorry, my autocomplete is crazy. All right, so now inside this function, what we are going to do is we need our HTTP library now, right? So again, I have to go back to the web, go to pub.dev, look for the HTTP library, which is this, copy it, go to the YAML, and then make sure it follows this. YAML files are very sensitive to spacing, so I'm going to get it, and I think let me also add a JSON serializable at once. So I'm going to search for JSON serial. So again, I'm going to copy it, come over here, and paste. Alright, so we have our two package we need ready. So going back to the home, I can then first import the HTTP library. So import HTTP. And say final response is equal to await get API. So now, as you can see, there's a complaint here. So our API is a string, and it is expecting a URI. So what we have to do is say URI dot parse. Then we pass in our string. So basically, you're converting a string to a URI. Now we have this response. I mean, we can print out this response and see what we have, right? So I'm just going to say response, yes. So I think now I have to run our code. It will probably take some time. Yeah. Now, as our code is running, I think I can continue writing the rest of the code, right? So what we can do is let's see. So we can try and get the data that we can try and get the data. So I have this extension called Thunder Client, right? So I can easily use this and sort of mock or make a request to the API, and then get the data Okay, our is done, and it says what? It says our API key is wrong. It's an invalid key. Okay. Then I think I didn't copy the right thing. Oh, I did copy the right thing. It is active. Okay. Alright, let's see. I'm just going to try it here. Let's see. So we need to change this $sign. Sorry, it's here. So we have this, which is latitude. And the last one is, I think let me just try another key. Let me make a get. Oh, there's something here. Okay. Right. So yeah, I think the issue is with our key, but you can see we have our data here. Right. So I'm going to replace what we have here with the key and try and run it again and see. Okay, good. So now, as you can see, we have data in our terminal. So what I'm going to do is, what I usually do is, I come here, I copy this, and I go to JSON to that, right? You can use any of these websites. So I think let me use this. Open quick type. Then you can paste in the response here. I'm going to call it weather. So the language you are converting the JSON to is the that language. So where is it? Here. Yeah, we want now safety. No, we don't need this. We don't need. Okay, no, I think. Oh, fill that record. Yeah, I think this is okay. So as you can see, it has generated a class for us. The class that we need, right? It has generated everything for us. So I'm going to copy it. Now go back to my code. I'm going to create a new file called weather. I'm going to just bump this here. We are going to make some modifications now. So I'm going to get rid of all this. And then I'm going to introduce the realizable. Why is it not? It's supposed to import. Why is it not importing? Let's look at, maybe I'm doing something different. Okay. And just copy the import. Alright. So for the generated file, it's going to be part weather.g. So it's going to generate this file for us. And this is part of this class. That's what this means, right? This file is part of this class. That's all that means. So now in our code, let me see. Do we have anything weird? No. Okay. So now going back to our code. So we need this from and to, right? So let me copy this over. So you can just let it, you can leave it like this and work with it, or you can use the serializer. So let's go into this comment and say weather from this. So this naming is actually very important because the class that's generated or the file that's generated to be based on this naming, right? So I'm going to say it's JSON. Then in this case, I can get rid of all this code. Right, so basically we are writing like lesser code. And again, we have cloud here, so I need to add it for this. And then say what? Then this, all this. So it should be clouds from JSON. This will be underscore dollar this. The same thing. So I'm going to say it should be this. And I'm going to just do it for the rest, right? So let me quickly do that. So I think there's one package that we need that we didn't add, which is the builder package, which we have to add to our dev dependency. All right, we have wind. I mean, it's quite a lot. I'll do the last one. Alright, so there's one package that we didn't add, which is the build runner. Right. So if you want to add a package, one shortcut way to do it is you can go to view, go to command palettes, then you can search for add dependency, right? So you see it. So right here you can easily just type in the dependency, and once you click on it, your text editor will add it. I think I made a mistake. It's not supposed to be added here. It's supposed to be added as a dev dependency. Sorry about that. So add here a dev dependency. So now if you look at this, it is added here, right, under dev dependency. I'm just going to get them. All right. So now in my terminal, I can now use the command. I think what's the command here? This is the command, right? So let's run build runner build. Okay, so as you can see, this class has been generated for us. So again, this is a generated class. You don't have to modify it, and so all this that we're supposed to do, as you can see, it is doing that for us. So we don't have to do all this, right? So yeah, I mean that's how to use the JSON serializer. So now going back to our code over here. Let me change our placeholder to a scaffold and add an app bar. It's not a const. All right. So this is what we have. Now let us convert our response. That is, so if you look at this body, so this body is a string, right? So let us convert now this string to JSON. So we're going to say final JSON is equal to JSON.decode. Remember, we use decode to convert it from a string to a map. But before we do this, we can also check if response.status code is 200. So we are checking if everything is okay, right? If you look at this, you can see status code 200, it means it is okay. But if something goes wrong, let me just remove this tool from the API key and make a request. You can see it has changed, right? So that's the essence of we checking if it is okay. So if it is okay, then we convert else. Then probably, I mean, here we can print out, and we can also just throw we can also throw an exception, error. That's it. So now we have this as an object. So let's see again what we have here. So we have this as a map. Now let us now convert our map to JSON, an object, right? So how do we do this? We say weather so we need to import this. So now we basically have a class called weather. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and say weather, which is nullable. So weather can be null because we can have an error. And I'm going to say this weather is this. So just like this. But I'm just going to use set state. I mean, again, this is no state management. I mean, we are not using any particular state management here. We are just doing everything in the main thread. Else, after we throw, I mean, you should probably still let it be now. So now we have this. So let's see if this actually works. Alright, so it's complaining of something, right? So it said we are casting now to number, and it's pointing us to where we are. So it's saying what type now is not a sub type of number. So I think the smartest thing now to do is just make everything nullable, because we don't really know which one is. I mean, okay, you can look at the data and determine which one is nullable or not. I'm just going to say, I mean, everything is like nullable. But there are some things here that you know will definitely not be null. But again, I don't want to go through all that debugging, so I'm just going to set everything to nullable to get rid of that error. So we have this, then once again this, and this. Are we done? Oh, there's still not done. I'm sure there should be a package that can use. So now after doing this, we need to generate our build file again. Okay, so coming back, restarting to see. All right, so no error. So which means that now we have weather. So we have our data inside weather. So now we can create our body, and inside this body, I'm just going to use. Should I use this? Where is the column? And inside this column, we are going to have different texts, and I think I can just print out everything over here, right? So so I have a temperature here. Let me see if I can make this thing big. So size is 32 and font weight is bold. Yeah, I think I can also center it. So yeah, so we have our temperature, which I think is in Fahrenheit. So if you look at the documentation, I mean, they basically explain, I think, the data. So temperature, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so here it is. So default is okay, it's in Kelvin. Yeah, so yeah, it depends on the metric we are using. So let me see if I can change the metric so I know it's, and yeah, so we have to use one of these. Yeah, one metric. Okay, yeah, now we have our data. So this is in degrees. So I mean, if you like to add, I think there's a shortcut for you to add a degrees, but I can't remember it. So degrees is a symbol. I'm going to get it here. Just go over here and add it. Right. So yeah, basically we have this. I mean, you can add the rest. I'm just going to add another two, and then we are done. So I want to look at the data that will be pleasing to show, which is something like, yeah, whether it's going to rain or not. So weather, so there's weather, which is a list. I just want the first one. Dot description. It's nullable. So yeah. So few clouds, and what again do we need? Yeah, I think so. I'm just going to make this main, and then make this the description. So yeah, basically that's it. I mean, we're able to get our API, convert the response to an object, and then display our data. So yeah, at this point I'll take questions. If anyone has any question, please ask, and I'll try my best to answer.